I have played in and watched several hundred nuclear operative rounds, and there's a few basic tips that I can think of that both experienced and nuclear operative agents alike mess up or just don't do quite correctly. The first tip is a very general tip: stick to your commander's plan and stick together. If your plan is to separate, well, then do what the commander says. But if you're doing general combat fighting as a nukie, your odds of surviving and winning is much better when there's only 4 or 5 of you. Remember, you're fighting up to 70, 80 people, maybe even plus 100 depending on the server you're playing on. There may only be 5 of you. You need to utilize your tiny numbers as much as you can. The strength of nuclear operatives comes in their gear and their small team cohesion. They get to see who's a nukie just by looking at them. They have little icons that tell you who's a teammate. The station does not quite get those luxuries. Their gear isn't as good. They do not have the same team cohesiveness as your small group should. Fight together, stick together, die together. The second recommendation is to always have some form of no-slip shoe. There are 2 of these. There are no-slip shoes, which you can wear at all times and will not reduce your movement speed ever. It is also only 2 telecrystals. It is incredibly cheap for how effective this is. There's also blood red mag boosts, which this is twice as much, and these do slow you down when you turn them on. However, there's a jetpack inside, and another tip involved with this, I guess this is tip 3, always have some form of jetpack or the ability to get back to your jetpacks. Most nuclear operatives are going to jetpack onto the station, so you need to leave your jetpack either in a place you're going to remember or have a backup, like keeping a blood red mag boot on you, or potentially even keeping your uplink on you to be able to purchase a jetpack as well. A normal jetpack's only 2 TC, so you could theoretically just keep this until you need the jetpack again, keep your uplink, keep the 2 TC, and always have the no slips. The only time the blood red mag boots are objectively better is if you kill gravity or the station just doesn't have gravity. Then you get unrestricted, well, restricted slowed, but able to actually walk movement. So tip 2 and 3 is wear no slips and make sure you have some form of jetpack. You never know when you're going to be told to go back into space or have to retreat. And finally, this segues into the main part of the video, is always have options to maneuver and retreat. Nukies are going to take damage. You're going to get shot. You're going to have to fall back, and you especially do not want to get surrounded. I'm in a bagel hallway, and a lot of nukie fights happen right here. Right in this hallway, a lot of nukie teams come straight through medbay and come here. Just pretend things would be smashed in. There are 2 primary weapons that the nuclear operatives have that are great for getting through basic cover. There is the energy sword for 8 telecrystal, and nuclear operatives also will get a free fire axe on their shuttle. Both of these are actually pretty even in the time it takes for them to get through walls and doors, and especially windows. Due to the fact that fire axe swings slower despite having higher damage, the time between getting through walls and stuff is basically the same. For example, an energy sword against an airlock will take 19 hits to destroy an airlock. However, a fire axe would only take 10 hits, but since it swings slower, that's still about 14 seconds. So the fire axe is generally just a little bit better at getting through things. It's also worth mentioning the fire axe is an inherent crowbar, so in times where you destroy power or just need to pry open something, you don't even have to put your hands down to use the fire axe. You can also pry with one hand, so that's one major benefit here. But for example, if I needed to go through this airlock and I locked myself out, the airlock seems like a decent option. However, in any situation where you are in a room where there's an airlock and a window, the window is going to be the ideal thing to destroy, because windows, especially just normal reinforced windows, break very fast. A fire axe 4 hits a reinforced window, and then you will 2 hit the grill. So you in 6 hits will get through this, where it would have taken 10 hits to get through the airlock, and that's true with the energy sword. So in any situation like this where you're cornered in a room and you need to make a way out, look for windows first, then look for solid walls, then look for airlocks. A normal solid wall will also break pretty quickly to a fire axe and an energy sword. And reminder, these are basically the same time to destroy a wall, door, and window between the 2. So it's 7 hits to destroy a solid wall, and then an additional 2 to destroy the girder. So even still, if say there was only a room with just an airlock and a solid wall, I would have got through the whole wall in one less swing. It would have taken an extra swing for the airlock. Now we're going to move on to the number 1 killer of nuclear operatives, and that is firelocks. Without proper access, engineer access, you can't even open them or I guess close them in this situation, but engineers can close these with nothing. But the thing is though, if they're not actually locked, anyone can open them even without a crowbar. If you do not have engineering access and you want to close it, you can crowbar it, but again, you could just literally press E on it afterwards, so this doesn't really do much. However, things are going to get spaced, and that is just a fact of life when nuclear operatives are on board. So if I space this room real quick, we'll see the firelocks close, and if you press open it before the spacing can occur and the lights aren't on, you can open the door. However, now the lights are on, I can't press E or left click to open the door, but if you have engineering access, you can just open it. But let's say we're in a situation where we didn't have that type of access. However, sometimes firelocks actually, even though they are technically pressure locked, will still let you open them. If you do not have an engineering access, you can still just pry these open, no problem, but they are going to close in your face. However, if you get a really large object, like say a maintenance closet or any type of closet, you can actually stick the closet in where the firelock would be, and you can even leave it open so you can walk freely through this, and you will not have to pry it open. Firelocks are also incredibly tanky. They have even more durability than reinforced walls, so trying to get through one with even a fire axe just hitting it could take upwards of 50 seconds, and you do not want to spend 46 seconds showing your enemy that you're stuck by hitting a firelock. So you really want to try to bar these open and try to leave pathways. So for example, if I was trying to retreat in this situation, and the firelock actually closes. Apparently, it just doesn't even want to close now. So, like, that's another example why putting a locker there can be great, is that you can actually basically break the firelocks and keep them open once things start getting pressure locked out. Anyways, though, in this situation, if I can't, like, get through a firelock or I keep getting stuck on firelocks, well, there's a window nearby so you could break the window, but pretend I am surrounded completely by reinforced walls and an airlock. Well, the airlock would then be a good option to get through, but even then, breaking through an airlock can take 14 to 19 seconds depending on your weapon. So if you're stuck in a room, again, hypothetically, surrounded by reinforced walls, firelocks, and an airlock, the airlock would still take longer to break through. If you have C4, you can then C4 any of these, and C4 will destroy all of them. But to save the telecrystals, if you have a set of tools on you, all you need to do to disassemble a firelock quickly is first you have to weld it, then use a wrench on it. If it's a glass firelock, you have to crowbar it. If it's not a glass firelock, you skip that part and then you use a screwdriver, and then you just unwrench it, and you can just drag the firelock away, and you can disassemble this in about 10 seconds. The glass adds like an extra 1 second of time, so that is also something worth considering. And if you still have your uplink on you, you can actually purchase something like called the Jaws of Life. Yes, this doesn't leave a permanent path open, and what I'm trying to recommend here is that you break things so you always have a path out. But let's say I was locked in here, using a Jaws of Life on a door is still about the same speed as breaking a window to get through. So if these were all walls and airlocks around me, using the Jaws of Life to get through would still be ideal, even if the door is going to close behind me. You could then use the locker trick, like in this situation, like if I want to go through here, I could Jaws of Life the door open, which is still faster than trying to break it, and then drag a locker through. But the problem is, if somebody moves the locker, well, the door is going to close, and you're going to get stuck in here. So again, I would still recommend you try to break everything that you can before you actually try to move through areas. You should always have basically a full path of destruction from your point of entry to wherever you start fighting, so you always have a chance to get out. And recently, this is actually an interesting change. The Bulldog does terrible damage against structures. However, you can shoot through airlocks in 3 seconds if you use 6 shells. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can shoot through airlocks. So if you're stuck between an airlock and there's a angry, bloodthirsty crew coming after you, and you don't want to put away or pry open an airlock, you don't have time to destroy one, and you certainly don't have time to deconstruct a firelock, and this one airlock is what's separating you, in just 3 seconds you can spray through a door. You will have to reload to get through a second airlock, but that is another possibility. The downside of that is at the very current second that you can't just buy extra Bulldog magazines. You have to either steal the ammo or somebody would have given you an ammo bundle. So using your precious ammo on a door is certainly a last case scenario over an infinite use melee weapon or infinite use tools, but it is very, very fast. This video is certainly a little disorganized, but these are really just general tips. Hopefully my point stands strong here. Stick together, use no slips, have an escape route by breaking everything in a straight line that you can. Don't enter rooms without a way out, and especially not one with firelocks, because firelocks are a pain. And work together. You are a team antagonist. Stick with your team. Make sure your team can escape. Make sure your team can live another day. Remember, slow feet means you're weak. No escape route means you're stuck. Always be on the move. Good luck.